All right, so how do we find the area of a circle? We find the area of a circle. I remember the formula. Okay, so area of a circle is pi r squared. Pi r squared. So in this first one, we're going to do pi times, what's the radius of this circle? 10, half of 20. So pi times 10 squared. What does that give you? 314 1600 square centimeters. 314.16 centimeters. Okay, on this one, pi times 5 squared. Which is what? 78.54. Okay, on this one we're solving for r, so we're practicing just some algebra skills here. So to solve for r, I want to get r by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is to get rid of, well, let's get rid of the 4 first. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And the reason I'm doing that is that makes these 4's cancel to 1. So that gives pi r squared. Okay, what's 64 divided by 4? It's 16. Now I want to divide both sides by pi to cancel this pi out. So that just leaves r squared, and that cancels that one out and just leaves 16. Then how do we get rid of a square? What do you do to get rid of a square? What's the opposite of square? Is what? Yep, square root. Square and square root are opposites, inverses. They cancel each other out. So that just cancels that to r, and then what's the square root of 16? It is 4. Okay, on this one, same thing. I want to solve for r. So on this one, I'm going to do is actually divide by pi first. That makes these pi's cancel. That leaves 2r. These pi's cancel. That leaves 5. Divide both sides by 2. And it just gives you a decimal 2.5. Okay, so what we're doing today is we're going to talk about surface area and volume for spheres. Now, the last 2 weeks, what we've done is we spent 2 days on surface area for one set of shapes, and then volume, 2 days on volume. Today, we're just combining it all together because it's pretty easy, really, on spheres because there's only one variable. Now, just in general, what's the difference between surface area and volume? We've talked about this before. What's the difference in surface area and volume? Okay, good. Surface area is the outside layer, kind of like the skin. Okay, the volume is what? Yeah, the inside, what it takes to fill the inside. What it takes to fill the inside. Okay, so for a sphere, the surface area formula is 4 pi r squared. 4 pi r squared is how you find surface area of a sphere. Now the way you find volume is 4 pi r cubed divided by 3. Notice on this one, on the radius, we put a 3 up here to the third power. Okay, so this is for a sphere. All right, now we're going to talk about for a hemisphere. What is a hemisphere? What is a hemisphere? Yep, it's half of it, okay? Like right here. This is a sphere. I mean, it's like it's a ball. And then a hemisphere is half of that. It's just cut exactly in half. Okay. Now, for a hemisphere, the surface area is 3 pi r squared. And the reason it's not just cut exactly in half is because on a hemisphere, you also have to account for the area of the flat side once you cut it in half. So that adds in another pi r squared. That's why that's 3 pi r squared. Now for volume, it is just cut exactly in half. So it is, it's 2 pi r cubed divided by 3. So in all of that, there's only one variable. What's the one variable in all of that? Is r. What does r stand for? Stands for the radius. So whenever you know the radius, I mean, that's all you got to know. And then you can find all this other stuff. So working with spheres is relatively easy. All right, so on this sphere, what's the radius for this sphere? Is 9. So for the surface area of a sphere, here's the formula, 4 pi r squared, so I'm just going to plug into that. 4 times pi times 9 squared. Okay, want everybody type that in your calculator? I'm come on, real quick. All right, and it gives you 1017.88 square inches. Now for volume, we do 4 pi r cubed divided by 3. So to get that cubed, you're going to push this below the equal sign. There's a button that looks like this. It's got a little house top. You push that, and then it'll just move it up here, and it'll just make a little box right here, and then you just type in the 3 right there. Okay, so everybody put that in your calculator. I'm going to come out and see it real quick. All right, what does that give you? $3,053.63 cubic inches. Okay, so I mean, really, there's not much to that. It's just plugging into the formula. So let's go ahead and look at the hemisphere. So what's the radius of the hemisphere?
13.
It's 13. Now again, this is the hemisphere. So on this one, I'm using these formulas. All right, so on this one, it's 3 pi r squared. All right, and that should give you 1,592.79 square feet. And again, this is a hemisphere, so I'm using these formulas right here. So for the volume now, it's 2 pi r cubed divided by 3. So 2 times pi times r cubed divided by 3. $4,601.39 cubic feet. Okay, so on the back, what we're going to do is we're going to be working backwards. So is this one here, is this a sphere or a hemisphere? This is a sphere. Okay, it's a whole thing. So this talks about the surface area. So how do we find surface area of a full sphere? What's the formula? Okay, 4 pi r squared. So what we're doing today on this part is we're working backwards. Instead of knowing the r, the radius, and looking for the surface area, I know what the surface area is, and I'm going to be looking for the radius. Okay? So what I'm going to do is, I know the surface area now is 379.94, so I'm going to plug in 379.94 in for SA. So that's going to go right here, 379.94 equals 4 pi r squared. And what I'm doing is I'm working backwards to find r. All right? So here's what I'm going to do. To solve for r, I need to get rid of the 4, I need to get rid of the pi, and I need to get rid of the squared because I need the r to be completely by itself. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to deal with this 4 pi. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just divide both sides. I'm just going to do this in one step here, divide both sides by 4 pi. And the reason I'm doing that is that those 4's are going to cancel, those pi's are going to cancel, and that's just going to leave r squared on this side. Now I just need to type this in my calculator, 379.94 divided by 4 pi. See what that gives me. And that gives like 30.23. And then one more step here. How do I get rid of a square? Take the square root. And what does it give me? 5.498. So that's just really going to round up to 5.5. Okay, I got one more little thing here because it's asking for the diameter. So how do I get to the diameter from the radius? Just times 2. So if you just double 5.5, what does that give you? Just gives you 11. Okay, the second one, is this a sphere or a hemisphere? This is a hemisphere. So look on the other side. How do we find surface area of a hemisphere? Is 3 pi r squared. Now again, what I'm doing here is I'm working backwards. Instead of knowing the r and looking for the SA, I know the SA and I'm looking for the r. So I'm going to plug in this for SA. So we're going to have 1356.48 equals 3 pi r squared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by 3 pi. These 3's cancel the 1, these pi's cancel the 1, that just leaves r squared. And I'm just typing this thing into my calculator right here, 1356.48 divided by 3 pi. That gives me 143.93, we'll say. And then one more step here. How do I get rid of this square? Okay, square root it. And that gives me like 11.997, so that's just going to round to 12. We'll just say 12. Okay, now one more down here. It says that the volume is 212.07. So how do we find volume of a sphere? Okay, 4 pi r cubed divided by 3. So again, on this one, instead of knowing the radius and looking for the volume, I know the volume and looking for the radius. So I'm going to plug in 212.07 for V. So 212.07 equals 4 times pi times r cubed divided by 3. So on this one, the first thing I need to deal with is this 3 right here. So since I'm dividing all of this by 3, I need to do the opposite of that. I need to multiply by 3. That way these 3's cancel the 1. It's going to give me 636.21. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 4 pi. That cancels the 1, that cancels the 1. Just typing this whole thing in. It's going to be 50.63. Okay. Now, here's a question. How do we get rid of this 3 right here? How do I get rid of this 3? If you go up here, that's what we did right here. When there was a square, I took the square root. So what happens in this situation is whenever there's a cube, I take what's called the cube root. Okay, you probably have never seen that before. Well, you may have, but that's what we're going to do is we're going to take the cube root. So it looks like this. All right, let me show you on your calculator how you're going to do this. All right, if you'll notice right here on your calculator, right underneath the equal, it's got this little square root with a little n on it. So if you push control and that, look, it brings up a square root symbol, but now it's got an extra little box here that you probably never dealt with much. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put a 3. Anytime you've ever had a square root, it's always been implied that there was a 2 there. But here, we're going to type in a 3, and we're going to type in that 63? And that gives me 3.699. So we're just going to round that and say 3.7.